Evening. I'd like to call to order the study session for the City Council for the City of Wheat Ridge, Colorado for Monday, October the 20th, 2025. We have two items on our study session tonight. Item number one is the Homeless Navigation Program update. Item number two is removal of utility marking requirements. And as we usually do with most of our meetings, we start with comments from the public. I have no one signed up to speak, either in City Council chambers or online. So we will go to our agenda item number one. This is the Homeless Navigation Program update, and I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Goff.
Great, thank you, Mayor. We have Corey Kohler here this evening, our housing navigator, and they always give a great update of what's been going on. Still a lot of success in our programs, so Corey's will pull this up and we'll get started.
Everybody's watching it, Corey. Don't worry about that. Yeah. People walk in and speak off. Oh, this word is right there. Test it and merciless. There we go. All the time.
Pretty good on refresher.
Are you as good? I don't want to look down. It'll come.
You can sit wherever you like.
That's good.
Yeah. Oh, Maddie's here too. Oh.
All right. Hello. Thank you for having us. My name is Corey Kohler, the housing navigator with the city, and we have. And so it's been a year since we last presented to you, but we're here to just give some updates, tell you about what we've been working on, some of our successes. A lot of the info is just going to be a refresher for most of you, but we do have some new info as well.
Okay.
Looks like Kent's gonna. Oh, there you go.
Appreciate it.
It's tough when they say it never works.
All right, so we're going to just give a quick program overview, go over some of our latest reporting, talk about some grants and partnerships, and then, of course, go over severe weather, which is probably the most pressing item now as we enter severe weather season, and then we'll have time for questions at the end. Next slide, please.
Okay, so this is a good, like you said, just be kind of a refresher.
Press the button. There you go.
Sorry, guys. So yeah, just to go over how the program works and how it was started. Jeffco, we're part of a larger collaborative called the Jeffco Homeless Navigation Collaborative. That started in early 2020. We joined them in December of 2020. At the time, we were encompassing Wheat Ridge, Edgewater, and Golden, but now Golden has its own navigators, so we still just serve Wheat Ridge and Edgewater. Kind of just like an overview of our day-to-day. We do outreach every week in spots that we know people experiencing homelessness are congregating or hanging out. And that's just to develop rapport, bring them snacks, water, things of that sort, and try to kind of gain their trust, make sure that they know that we're out here and ready to help them if they need anything. If people do agree to become a client, we do an intake with them into our database, which is called HMIS. And that's a way for us to track services, to like keep track of people's vital documents can be uploaded on there, see who else maybe they're working with, or what other services they're accessing at other agencies. We help people out with collecting their vital documents. This can be expensive to replace, birth certificates, IDs, things like that. And they're obviously really important for housing applications and work and whatnot. So we help people with that. Everyone's different. We try to, do specialized referrals for all those things you see, mental health, or substance use, legal issues. We have contacts at a lot of really great organizations, so we can refer people to specific things if they need it. And then from there, we just figure out what the pathway towards housing for each individual is going to look like. So some people might just need a little bit of help with their security deposit. They don't have $6,000 for first month's rent and a security deposit. We have funding to help with that. Some people we have on fixed incomes that simply aren't enough to afford market rate in the area. So we can work on finding Section 8 vouchers, other subsidized solutions and things of that sort. And we can help with all of everything included in the housing search. So it's going to be all the applications you have to pay for and fill out, interacting with landlords because that can be intimidating for some people. And then, like I said, security deposit help as well.
Okay, so you received in your packet our most recent quarterly report with all of the data that we're going to go through. I'm not going to read all of that off, but it will differ slightly from the packet you received just because this now includes the start of the fourth quarter. So this is almost live data. I think it's now maybe a week old. But on this particular slide, this is our program referrals. And we wanted to specifically highlight referral sources. So our biggest referral source is community partners. Those are, the nonprofits like Family Tree and JCMH, but it also includes local businesses, and interestingly, also includes the motels. We've been getting a fair decent amount of referrals from the motels, which I think is just a testament to the relationships that we've built with them, that they trust us enough and know that we can help the people that they identify as needing help. You see we have city staff up there. We've also separated out police and court because we wanted to highlight those specifically. But besides that, city staff includes parks, public works, our environmental service techs are a big source of referrals. So you see that almost half of all of our referrals come from within the city. So that includes the police, municipal court, and those other city staff we mentioned, which is really wonderful that we have such great working relationships across the city. And that, again, that those folks all trust myself and Maddie and to send those referrals and to keep them coming. We also meet with people regularly. So we have a working group that meets monthly where we meet with people from PD and parks and the courts to discuss anything and everything related to homelessness, trends that they are seeing, ways that we can help. And so it's good to, we make sure to keep those relationships, we foster them and keep them dynamic. We're also proud of the 15% in yellow up there of current or former client. So we get a lot of referrals from word of mouth, which we think also speaks to just having a good reputation within the community, that people we've worked with recommend us to their friends and neighbors. Next slide, please. So we've had 175 transitional and permanent housing placements since the program began, 34 placements since the last time we spoke to you last year. Just a little, but for a little bit of definitions, permanent housing are the things like you see on the screen there. Someone might get a voucher, or people have enough income that they can self-pay. Subsidized housing is very similar to a voucher, just slightly different. Or they stay with a family and friend on a permanent basis. Transitional housing is typically things like sober living facilities or residential work programs. On this slide, I particularly want to highlight the number of days before placement. We see 129 is the median amount of time it takes from when we first meet with someone to get in a housing placement. So it is not a quick process. And in fact, you see the highest number of days we've had is 936, so almost 3 years. And there are some active clients right now who, when we get them housed, will exceed that 936 days. So it can be a quick process, but more often than not, it is very slow. And we also, continuing to be a resident of Wheat Ridge is not a requirement of the program. We will help people get housed wherever we can. But we do think it's nice that so many of the folks we've worked with have ended up in Wheat Ridge. You see there the same amount that has ended up in Arvada, so tied for first. So all of those people are still your constituents, which we think is nice. And here we wanted to share one particular client story.
Yeah, so I had a client, this is a nice little feel-good story. I had a client that was housed recently. She was living in a motel with her adult son. So she was paying like $600 a week to live in this motel because she had a job. But she had, she was fleeing from a domestic violence situation. One of the things that led to her homelessness was obviously that, but also that there was a bunch of debt owed to an old apartment under her name, even though it was actually her ex-husband who had accrued it. And since we're able to be flexible with our funding, we were able to help her pay that off, a couple $1,000s, and then get her in the door in an actual apartment. So she was making plenty of money, just not enough to pay off. You know, she's hemorrhaging money living in the motel. So not enough to pay off the debt and not enough to save up for the security deposit. So now she and her son are safely not living in a motel. And we love that.
Next slide, please. This slide highlights our aftercare program. So we've learned a lot in the almost 5 years that the program has existed. One of the biggest is how much support people need after they are housed. Especially if you've never had a lease before, it's been a very long time. It can be very intimidating. The whole landlord process, having a lease, having all these rules to follow. I mean, just the size of the lease itself can be intimidating. Also, just the process of going from the streets to an apartment can be, I guess, counterintuitively a tough transition for a lot of people. It can actually feel more unsafe for a lot of people, especially if they're on the streets. More often than not, they have a community around them that may provide a sense of safety. And when you go into an apartment and you are completely alone, that can feel very unsafe. Another counterintuitive one is the quiet of an apartment. When you're used to near constant noise on the streets, can actually be very unsettling for people. I've had a lot of clients who've said they felt judged in their new apartment. You know, if we use a scattered site model. Again, we try to get people housed wherever we can, and very often that is in apartment complexes with other people who maybe have never been homeless, and so our clients can feel a lot of judgment, like that they are somehow projecting, or that everyone knows that they were homeless. And whether that's internal or not, it's still not a good feeling. Plus, there are plenty of new responsibilities when you have an apartment. You have to take care of it. And you have to follow all those rules, many of which you're not used to. So there's a lot that can start to undermine someone's sense of stability right away. And it can lead to issues like neighbor disputes or people not following those certain rules, or not knowing how to pay the rent or utilities. Especially a lot of places now require you to use a third-party entity, and you can only pay online. There's a lot of confusing things out there. So what we started to notice is that if things started to go awry, our clients wouldn't reach out to us to ask for more help. One, they didn't want to seem ungrateful, is what we heard from a lot of folks, that they felt that we had already helped them so much they didn't want to continue to ask for more help, or that they felt bad just for needing that continued help. You know, they wanted to stand on their own, and they didn't want to reach out because asking for help can be really hard. So we started seeing that a lot of people, some of our clients were getting evicted or getting, right up to that line of eviction for very preventable reasons. Things that if we had intervened much sooner would not have been major issues at all. And so there were opportunities for us to intervene, which is why we created Aftercare. It's a program that we're really proud of. We check in with people at regular intervals we try to be as preemptive as possible. So rather than waiting for an issue to arise, we try to ask all the questions that will alert us to any potential issues. And you can see we're also keeping track of what those issues are and the kind of help that we provide. But a new stat we have this year up in the middle at the top is we're starting to keep track of how many households are still housed after 1 year, which is the typical length of time for our regular intervals of checking in with people. We do it for a year. Some folks, you know, if we're seeing that a lot of issues are coming up, we'll continue after that year. But just for the 1 year, we're seeing that 83% of households are still housed. It's not perfect, but we are proud of that number. Next slide, please. Now, some program expenses. We only really started capturing this data intentionally in 2023, so that's why you'll see up at the top right there, we don't have 2021 or 2022, but 3 years of really good data. We see bridge housing is our number one cost. That is when we might have a housing placement or a housing solution identified for someone, but it's maybe a few weeks or a few months out. If it's a voucher, there's a lot of paperwork to go through. If they are self-pay, it can still take a while to find an apartment, especially if they have any tricky housing barriers on their background or anything that we have to negotiate, or we're just waiting for units to open up. And in that situation, we do our best to try to stabilize folks, because remaining on the streets, of course, is dangerous in itself, and you can lose important documents and all those things. So we try to put people into motels when we have a housing solution identified, just to provide stability and to make sure we know where to find our folks for signing paperwork and all of that stuff. Then move-in costs are next. That includes security deposit, maybe the first month's, renter's insurance, whatever's needed to get them the keys. For some folks, if they have low or no credit, apartments want to see a double deposit. So again, that would just not be possible without the help that we provide. So that's wonderful. We've also recently started paying for what furnishings we can. Again, another thing we started to recognize when we were implementing aftercare. Moving into an apartment has plenty of, from the streets, has plenty of potential obstacles, but moving into an empty apartment is just exacerbates those. So we try to pay for what we can, at the very least a bed and a frame, a mattress and a frame, so that people don't have completely empty apartments. But we talk with people and try to see what sorts of things would make them most feel at home, and do what we can, again, to buy those furnishings. And now we've extracted that as a separate category so we can keep track of how much we're spending on that. Also wanted to highlight at the bottom left there, the cost to reach housing, just like with the number of days, can be quite large. So can the cost. The median is only $1,550, which seems reasonable, but we see that the maximum can get very high. That typically that doesn't happen often, and it's only in situations where, like I was mentioning with bridge housing, sometimes the housing solution can be behind a lot of red tape or a lot of paperwork, or simply waiting for a unit to open up, which is the case with one client I'll tell you about in a little bit. But so we continue paying for that bridge housing until the housing opportunity is ready, and that's how that cost can get up there. Next slide, please. So we have some of our demographic data, which we are continuing to track. This we do have since the program began, because this data comes from HMIS, that database that Maddie mentioned earlier. The thing we wanted to highlight on this particular slide, and we can't see it on here because it's not a dynamic slide, but when you play around with the data, we've seen that the proportion of folks who have a disability has been decreasing. It was much higher in 2021 and then has been slowly falling. And we think that's maybe because early on, when the program first started, we were reaching the most vulnerable. And now that proportion is slowly tapering off. Next slide, please. Last bit of demographic data. On the left there, we asked everyone how many months they have been homeless in the past 3 years, and you see over half, it's been more than 12 months, which just highlights the fact that the longer you are homeless, the harder it is to get out. There are lots of ways to become homeless, but there are very few off-ramps to leave homelessness, and so it's so important to break that cycle early. Otherwise, folks can get stuck for a very long time. We also see that over half of our clients have no income, and the ones that do are typically on fixed income, like disability or Social Security retirement. But even with income, it can be really hard. I have an example and we had our feel good example. I have one that's still in process. A woman who was, she had to leave her trailer, which she owns, but she was, our new ownership bought the land that she was living on, the park that she was in Golden, overnight raised the rent to an amount that she could not afford. So she immediately moved to one of the motels near I-70 in Kipling and has been bouncing around between those ever since. She works full-time at a retail store in Golden. She takes 3 buses to get there because, that's just how the buses work. But that can lead to 12-hour days, because it can take an hour or more to get there, work for 8 or 9 hours, and then you have to come back. So not only, and paying almost $2,000 a month, it works out to roughly $492 a week with taxes at the motel. So spending all that money, but also all that time, there's no money or time left to do anything else. She can't save money for a deposit or even application fees. She makes too much money for food stamps. And so the little food that she is able to buy is of lower quality, less nutritious, because there's no cooking facilities at the motel. So she's stuck. She's just stuck in this cycle. And this is one where our partners at the motel reached out to us so that we can try to find a better solution. And we're close. We are close. We're trying to get her into an apartment in Golden, which is where she wants to be. That's where she's lived the majority of her life, and it'd be walking distance to her job. We're just waiting for a unit to open up, and the unit that does open up, rather than paying $2,000 a month, she's going to be paying closer to $1,700, which still isn't very affordable for her, but it's a much better situation because she'll have cooking facilities, she can walk to work. Should be much better. All right, Manny.
We'd also like to highlight some of our grants and partnerships. We could not do any of this work alone. The Glory of God Lutheran Church on 38th has been a really, really great resource for us. They have a sewing circle and they have a knitting circle, so they give us more hats than we know what to do with every year when it gets cold. Holy Cross Lutheran, which is right next to the building that Corey and I work in, are also a really great resource for us. We have presented to a group of interested citizens about homelessness and the work that we do, and we're able to talk a lot about sort of some myths and how people can best help out and what leads to homelessness and what we do specifically. Both of those locations have also been willing to host donation boxes like the one you see there for both the summer donation drive and now the winter donation drive. There's also a box in the PD lobby for that, if anyone has any winter stuff they're getting rid of. But yeah, just the faith-based community has been amazing this year with helping us out. We pulled in hundreds and hundreds of water bottles and bags from that summer drive, much thanks to them. So that was great. In terms of grants, we have applied for the Homelessness Resolution Program, which is a DOLA grant, $60,000, and we should find that out at the end of next month. And then we've also been the recipient of the Colorado Gives Foundation, $25,000 for the past 2 years, and we do expect to receive that again in March. Okay, severe weather, it looks a little bit different this year than it did in years past. Last year, the Lakewood Navigation Center, also known as Recovery Works, and Mission Arvada at the Rising Church were both functioning when severe weather was declared for overnight emergency shelter. This year, neither of those resources are available. The Recovery Works Center, it's a great thing. They're under, renovations to become a year-round overnight shelter. So when that happens, it's going to be fantastic that it's going to be open. But we are not expecting them to reopen their doors until sometime in December. Obviously, severe weather is likely going to be declared before then. So we have entered into an IGA with the other municipalities in Jeffco. And basically just motel vouchering people when severe weather is declared. So it's going to be a little bit different, but there isn't a gap. There's actually more availability for motel vouchers than there were shelter beds last year. They used data from last year and saw how many nights severe weather was declared. It was 50, and they allotted for there to be 200 motel rooms that we can use for 50 nights of severe weather, if that makes sense, because it's been confusing me a little bit too. So anticipating that 50 nights will get called, they'll be able to put 200 people or people double up into motels on those nights. And this is flexible. That's just kind of the estimate that we've got so far. But yeah, that's going to end up being more beds. So we are confident it's going to work out okay. And we are excited for the Navigation Center to reopen. Additionally, there is going to be an extreme weather response, and this is going to be a pop-up sheltering situation that is down at Jeffco Human Services. It's right at the end of the light rail, so it should be pretty easy for people to get there. And, this is like single digits, very, very cold, but it's going to have security, it's going to have storage, it's going to have hot meals. Those will likely be deployed just a few times, but it's really good that we know that, and hopefully nobody is stuck outside when it's really, really cold. So it just looks different. We've had to be a little bit more creative, but I do think that it's going to be fine, and you guys will all get some info sent out to you guys, just with some more details.
Yeah, we'll have an email going out tomorrow with all of this and more. The extreme weather response is going to be run by Jeffco Emergency Management, so that is separate from the IGA, which is just for the motel vouchers. I think that's all we have. Any questions?
Okay, Counselor Weaver.
Thank you so much, and thank you for all of the work that you're doing. I just had a couple questions. The first one, just as we come up on Colorado Gives Day again, is there a way, because I see the boxes and then I don't remember to put stuff in the boxes. And I'm just wondering if there's a place we can point people to if they would like to write a check, or I guess we don't write checks anymore. But can we give money to the program, and how would constituents go about doing that?
There's a link that we can send you guys. It's on the city website, not What's Up Wheat Ridge, correct?
Is it? Okay.
Yeah, there's a link to donate to.
It's
Awesome.
Through the Wheat Ridge Community Foundation.
It's through the Wheat Ridge Community Foundation. So it's not on the city website, it's on the foundation site?
I think both.
There's a link
Yeah.
back and forth? Awesome. Awesome. Great.
Maddie also created a really nice flyer last year that we can send to you again that has multiple organizations in the area, so not just our program, and how people can donate time, goods, or money.
Awesome.
To all
Yes,
those
I remember hearing that. But you all aren't a line item on Colorado Gives that I can go out on that day and
Right.
select. Okay. My other question was just as far as the metrics of how we know what percentages of all of these things, like, are there other programs around the state or country that you can compare when you say 83% of people do this, so we know sort of, does that make any sense? I'm just curious sort of how you know when you're doing something well versus improving, because this all seems amazing. And now that we're 5 years in, I was just kind of curious how you all make decisions on priorities and things like that.
Anecdotally, I can only say anecdotally, I think the 83% for after 1 year is slightly higher than maybe some other programs, but we haven't looked into it very extensively. Yeah, sorry,
Not a big deal. I was just kind of curious if there was even data out there.
I'm sure there is.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
The National Alliance to End Homelessness is probably the best, like my favorite resource for reading data about how different programs work and which ones are more effective and evidence-based practices and things like that. But again, I think Corey's right. I think it's a little higher, and I think because we're able to we're just small and we're able to really focus on what people need, and we are able to be very flexible with our funding, like I explained earlier, which is amazing because so many nonprofits or people who are exclusively using grant funding, et cetera, have I can buy this, but I can't pay off your past due, so I think that because we're able to be so flexible and creative, I think it leads us to having a bit of a higher number because we can just do really niche things for our clients that they can't find everywhere else.
Well, very cool. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Counselor Owen.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Maddie and Cola. I want to say that you guys have a lot of empathy, a lot of compassion. You're doing a lot of good work. It's really impressive, especially when I get a constituent that calls me up and complains about other cities surrounding us, but not Wheat Ridge, about homeless. And I'm like, what about Wheat Ridge? He says, well, you're doing a good job. And so I really want to say that. And finding these creative solutions, with thinking a little bit outside the box of, paying something off so to get them moving forward, that's great. The one question I did have was about the housing placements by city slide. And first off, I just want to point out that I'm looking at 3 cities, and Wheat Ridge, which is a third of the size of Arvada, is doing the same equal amount of placements, which is really impressive. And Arvada was also calling me, people that were running for city council, and saying, what are you guys doing in Wheat Ridge? Is that number is that 34? Is that 34, or is that something that is a 34 times something?
No, yeah, that's 34 placements, households.
Placements, okay.
But those are who we placed, right?
Yes,
Not the
yes,
city
yes.
of Arvada.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes, correct. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I think that's, I still think that's really, really impressive. All those people got placed. I think we're doing a great job. And just, let us know what you need. I'm supportive. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Counselor Hulteen.
First of all, thank both of you for all your work. I just will echo Councilor Ohm's kudos. I mean, we are doing good work, and as someone who was seated to council before we started this work, I say it often, but we really went from zero to doing a really great job really quickly. I appreciate the coordinated effort across the county. I think that probably helps a lot. In particular, I just want to recognize the aftercare program that you guys are doing. I think when you shared that last year, it really had a big impact on me, that empathetic experience of it's not just getting people in housing, but stabilizing them in housing. And I'm just really proud that that's the approach that we're taking, and also recognizing their wraparound needs in terms of what it takes to succeed once you're in there. So I do have a couple of questions. Excuse me. What kind of support do you guys give for people who are trying to find housing and have pets?
We look for pet-friendly apartments, I suppose so, but if someone is interested in a place and it's not pet-friendly, we encourage them to get an ESA letter, because like every single time it's true. It is their emotional support animal. It's only tougher if they need to go to a shelter or something like that in Denver in the meantime. You know, it happens. We just don't have any overnight shelters in Jeffco yet. And a lot of shelters don't allow pets, but there are multiple, that's what I'm looking for, shelters, other programs that will hold your pet for a little bit, if you're experiencing housing instability and can't take care of them or whatever. So I find that that helps, but I think it's usually not that big of a barrier.
Yeah, we've never
Yeah.
had to turn anyone away for that reason.
Yeah.
The hardest we've ever had, there was one client who had 4 dogs, and most apartments, they cap it at 2, regardless of ESAs. So that was difficult, but you just keep searching. I mean, there are places out there that will accept it. We just have to keep searching.
I really appreciate that because to your point, I mean, they really are their emotional support and companions. Another question I had is, there were some funds spent on family reunification. Can you share a little bit more about what those efforts are like?
Yeah. So if someone comes to us and this doesn't happen too often, I think I saw on the graph, but it does happen where if they have family or friends, someone that they can live with who lives in either another part of Colorado or another state, and they just have no way of getting there, we can help them get there. And, we'll want to talk to the person on the other end to verify that they do have a place to go. We don't want to send someone to be homeless somewhere else. But we verify that they do, in fact, have a place to go, and we can get them there.
Oh, great. 2 more quick questions. This is just a curiosity. You're showing the referrals by quarter, and like consistently Q2 was lower. And I was just sort of curious, like what contributes? Because the data year to year was like surprisingly consistent, and that Q2 was low. And I was just sort of curious, like, because I was like, oh, is that winter? No, it's not winter.
Yeah, I knew that. I knew someone was going to ask that, and I was racking my brain trying to figure out why.
Warming up.
Yeah,
That's what I think, because in the wintertime, people we've never heard of before will just call us pretty often, like a few calls a day. If someone just looking for a motel voucher, asking for resources, what have you, that lightens up when the snow starts to melt,
Okay.
I think.
My last question, actually, I meant to share this with the aftercare. I had dinner with a friend on Saturday night, and he was sharing about his father struggling with homelessness. And recently, his father had lost the apartment that he was in, and it was because there was a $1 difference between what was in the lease and had been put in the property management database. And so he had been underpaying by $1, and literally it was like a $15 thing, but they used it as justification. And he could have fought it, but he didn't have the resources and support to do that, and ended up back out on the street. So anyway, that story is like super fresh in my mind. So that's, again, kudos to the aftercare program. And then lastly, I just want to ask, we're hearing from our community member that, there's a lot of impacts around like, being visible in public around like immigration. Are we encountering any, like, do we encounter issues with people's immigration status and how that's like going through the system or hesitancy to engage in the program?
we haven't encountered it much, but this is anecdotal and my personal theory, but there are just so many more services available for migrants east of Sheridan that I think the people themselves don't often come west of Sheridan. But again, that I could be wrong, but we haven't seen it very much. The one time it did come up a few months ago, there was a family in Anderson Park that we ended up referring to the Jeffco Family Navigators, which we do with all families. Anytime that there's children involved, we refer them to the Jeffco Navigators. So we didn't interact with them a whole lot.
Well, thank you again for all your work. And I want to just thank my colleagues that we've been supporting this, and we've built some housing since we first started the program. So I'm just grateful for all of us for supporting this and for your good work. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Larson.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll be as brief as I can on this. First off, I do want to commend the work that you guys have done. Obviously, there's a lot of thought goes into how you go about your day every day and how to avoid people falling through the cracks. I mean, that's just so important. Particularly, what caught my eye was the work you do with the community court at, is it Jefferson Avenue at the church there?
Yep.
It just, I mean, it just makes so much sense. And looking through the numbers that you guys provided, it's obvious that you are responsible stewards of the city's money. And I think that, again, is commendable. But the one thing I did want to just inquire about was you mentioned people that have, that are living day to day in a housing situation where they're responsible for paying their utilities. And with typical utility costs over time, they tend to increase, and often this can catch somebody in a difficult situation. Are there, well, you tell me, what, if somebody's having trouble paying their XL bill for heat, how do you refer them to solutions?
Yeah, so there are, and these fluctuate with funding, especially when things change at the federal level, but like Denver has what's called the LEAP program, Low Energy Assistance Program. So people can apply to that. It doesn't always have funding. It's kind of like the emergency rent assistance that they have as well. It fluctuates. And when they run out, they run out. That is also something that we can help with. Especially if it's someone fell behind because of a certain circumstance. They're out of work for a little bit. They had an unexpected medical bill. It's not, we don't want to pay people's utilities every single month or help them every time they can't pay it, because that's not setting people up for sustainable success. So it might be a talk of like, okay, what led to this? Do we need to talk about budgeting? How can we prevent this in the future? But if someone exhausted all of the available resources from the state or what have you, that's something that we can help with ourselves.
Right, yeah, and that is so important. And just, and I'm sure you guys are aware of it, there's the nonprofit known as the Energy Outreach Colorado that provides not only support for utility payments, but also will pay for furnaces that break and that sort of thing. So I would highly recommend that when the opportunity or the need arises, that you refer them to Energy Outreach Colorado.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Counselor Snell.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple questions, but first, I appreciate so much this presentation and just all the work. You're doing good work and leading with so much compassion, and it's noticed and it's needed. Couple questions I was curious about. I noticed that the highest, like the leading number in the population that we're currently helping is the 45 to 54-year-old. And I'm curious about youth and teens and young adults. How is that? Do you feel like that's more centralized to more urban areas? You see a lot of homeless, you hear and see homeless youth as opposed to maybe all the way out west here. How does that factor in, or do you hear about that?
Yeah, I think it is more concentrated in urban areas, but there are also more resources available for unaccompanied youth. There are, some organizations that serve specifically that and only that population. So I just think there are more services available. It's when people hit middle age, there seem to be nothing. Yeah.
Thank you for that. Other question about Recovery Works, and you mentioned maybe December they're going to be open up. Will they be fully functional and year round at that point?
That's the plan, yeah. So we'll keep you guys in the loop.
That's
on that.
fantastic.
But that is what they intend. As with all building renovations and whatnot, we don't have like a hard day that we're certain it's going to be open by, but yeah, they should pick up off the ground running as far as I know.
And I will just caution, we should, and I'm just as guilty of this. We should probably start referring to it as just the Lakewood Navigation Center, because Recovery Works may not be selected as the operator
Got it.
once it's reopened, but whoever it is, it
Sure.
will be operating fully.
It will be run kind of a different model. It won't be necessarily overnight sheltering. It'll be more transitional, is what I've been told. So 3 to 4 month stays. So it may not be available for our weather navigation
Right.
services and overnight sheltering, but
Right.
I think that's still up in the air a little bit. But
Yeah.
130 beds, I believe, is what they're planning to build out.
Yeah. Filling a need for sure. That's great. Last question. are you in need of more spots for donation boxes in our community?
We have about 8 deployed right now. If you have a place that you want to put one, absolutely.
Okay,
But I feel like it's not, don't put yourself out.
sure. I
But
do
yeah,
have one. I'll email you guys.
cool,
about it.
yeah, sounds
Okay,
good.
wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Counselor Dozeman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for the update. Really appreciated. So I think there was clarity in the discussion around the housing placements by city. Can you talk about, I guess, the parameters that make it easier to place people in various communities, or why it would be these areas that take on the most, such as Arvada, Wheat Ridge, Littleton, Aurora?
I think shortest answer is that most people just want to stay in this general area. That's one of the conversations we have when we start doing the housing search is where do you want to live? That's the first place we'll look. And of course, if we can't find anything in that area, we expand. But most people just want to stay near what they're used to. I think we are very lucky. The number for Wheat Ridge is so high because of our partnership with Foothills Regional Housing. So we had the Vance Street lofts. That accounts for a huge chunk of that number by itself. And the other projects that they have worked on in Wheat Ridge. Yes, the Ives.
It's wonderful. Love to hear that partnership is working for its purpose. So I did have a question about the auto exits. So it says that it occurs after 180 days of no contact with the client. Is that generally due to them seeking resources and working with other jurisdictions, or can you kind of give any insight as to what the reasoning would be behind that?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. For the majority of those, it's folks who have, for whatever reason, just moved into a different jurisdiction. They might be, they might go to the Action Center to get food and they run into one of the navigators there, or they go to another service agency to get other services and they sort of pick up steam with someone else or a different organization. And that's one where if that happens, we're happy to do a warm handoff. We also will collaborate with those other agencies and help them if we can sort of tag team. But yeah, a lot of it is just people moving on. Or maybe they were just passing through Wheat Ridge and we happened to catch them while they were here, but they were on their way somewhere else anyway.
Okay, thank you. And just from the Q4 numbers from 2024 and then the early numbers in 2025, it looks like there is still a pretty significant need. Are you seeing that kind of trend upwards still, or where are you seeing like the need and the program moving forward?
I think it's been pretty consistent. Would you not agree?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think I'm noticing any sharp inclines in people needing our help, but it does change by the season.
Yeah, it seems it's definitely not decreasing, the need. But yeah, I think like Maddie said, we're not seeing a sharp increase yet, although we are kind of anticipating that we might need to fill some gaps. A lot of nonprofits in the area that do a lot of this work as well are having to cut funding, and so we might start seeing more.
It's changing all the time. We will see.
Thank you. Well, Corey and Maddie, I want to thank you guys for a great presentation tonight. And more than that, I want to thank you for the work that you do in our community. I had just a couple of, kind of continuing on in the larger scope of things. We're about 5 years into this program, and I'm sure a lot of our residents thought, oh, well, we'll throw this out there, and in 3 years, we won't have any, we'll have figured this whole thing out. It sounds to me like that is not, in fact, the case. And do you think that, a couple of questions, do you see the same individuals in our communities, or is this sort of, we're taking care of the group that was here before, and now we've got a new set of individuals that are falling homeless?
They're very transient folk. So I see a lot of new faces every day, and I get calls or emails from a lot of new people every day. There are some people that we know that, especially the more visible homelessness, street homelessness, which is oftentimes the toughest cases to crack. You know, they're not in a motel, they're not living in a car, they're living on the street. We see some of those folks quite often, just because that road to housing can be rather long. But as a general rule, it's a lot of new people all the time, and that's because they're coming out from Denver or Lakewood, or they have been priced out of their apartment, I think.
And are we seeing more of the camper, more entrenched homeless people? Do you think that we've made a decrease in, it seems like anecdotally, when I drive around the city, there are less bodies that I see, and I don't know whether they're sheltering, more secure places, or whether the population has sort of changed a little bit.
I think it definitely has changed. I think what you're noticing is what we're also seeing, that there is less. I think we've all noticed that around I-70 and Kipling, of course. Yeah, I think that's true, that some of those folks, this also, I guess, answers your first question a little bit as well. We have helped a lot of those folks that you used to see consistently, but there are still some.
Okay.
So it is decreasing, but there are still some.
Okay. And my last question is sort of looking into the future. Do you think we've established a program that is addressing the needs of the unhoused people in our population to kind of the best or a good way to approach it? And is this something we should anticipate a need for in our budget going forward in years? I didn't think it was that.
No.
Yes.
I'll rephrase it if it was.
No.
It's sad to say, but I do think so.
Yeah.
Especially just with how close we are to Denver and how rents keep rising.
Okay.
I think it's
Yeah.
going to be still an issue, unfortunately.
But we will continue to keep you updated. If we feel that there's a big shift in the need, we will absolutely let you know. We'll come to you.
Yeah, I mean, I think we need to know that. Yeah. So, thank you so much. Any other questions from council? Or
Just if I could wrap up real quick, I appreciate council's recognition of the compassionate work these two do. And as you know, we're part of a larger regional program, but I hear on a regular basis from the folks running the regional program that Wheat Ridge has the best navigation program. I'm not shy to say that. It is. And people come to us to, and you heard it, you get questions, and it's true. So just proud of what Corey and Matt are doing. Thank you.
but also commensurate with the other things that we do in the city. This is really
Oh,
this is
yeah,
the
of course.
best city in the state, so, right there. Thank you all for being here. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you all.
Let us know.
We
if
appreciate
can,
your support.
Help you some more. Okay, thank you very much. And with that, we will go to our agenda item number 2. And this is removal of utility marking requirements. Mr. Goff.
Thank you. Yeah, kind of an interesting topic. Shouldn't take too long, I don't think, this evening, but we've received, you've all seen these utility markings across the city, right? There's a few examples in your packet. They're required by law for safety reasons. They're required for good reasons. But especially in Wheat Ridge, with all the growth and the redevelopment, I think we're seeing more and more of it everywhere. And it seems like it never goes away. And so we have received a few questions, complaints from residents. It's always been a real pet peeve of mine as I drive around. And I've always wondered, can we do more? And there are a few things that we can do. So we've outlined a few of those options in your memo, and we're just looking for some direction tonight. If you'd like us to bring forward an ordinance with some of these new requirements or additional requirements. Kent has some experience in other cities he's worked in that have stricter requirements when it pertains to utility markings. Kent, do you want to provide any brief comments?
Yeah, I think, we encourage, our staff does utility locates, so you know that we do that. And we use water-soluble paint, and it's just really frustrating, and we can see it coming. We're going to have a beautiful Wadsworth project, and somebody's going to want to go out and pothole. And they can't just pothole, they're gonna mark everything. And on electrical, especially the red, you know, there could be three-phase coming out of it, and they're just gonna paint the world. And so, you know, they may come out and they do their pothole, and they're gone in half a day, but the marks remain for years. And so this is just a way to, you know, hold them accountable. Again, I don't think the intent here is to follow around every contractor and developer and, you know, make them scrubbing bubbles every single mark that's on the pavement. But when they really make a mess and it's really unsightly and you drive by it and you see it, it's, you know, we want to have some legs and some teeth to say, you know, you need to be responsible and clean this up. If you didn't choose to use water-soluble paint, that's on you. So get a Hotsy out there and some, you know, grease and clean it up. And so I think that's why we're bringing this forward. Again, Patrick mentioned in another municipality, we use this, and again, not 100% of the time, but one time they painted our bridge. And we're like, why would you paint the bridge? There is absolutely zero utilities on that bridge. You know, go clean it up. And so, you know, just having that ability to, you know, make them go out and do that is kind of what we're looking for.
Counselor Weaver.
This seems like a no-brainer. I completely support this. Thank you for bringing it forward. And I'm especially going to complain about the Google line that went through. That was marking all over 38th.
Yeah.
Anyway, thank you.
Counselor Rome.
Thank you. I think I've had at least one constituent that complained about it, and I've asked some people in my profession about, is there water soluble, and they weren't aware of it, and so I find that interesting. I do think too that if we are going to, and I understand it's not going to be 100% of the time, but if I'm just curious, like, are they using solvents to get off the permanent paint?
I don't know the official term, but what we use like on graffiti and stuff, it's called elephant snot. And it is a product and it will, you know, wipe away most things. So like on a mural or something, if there's really bad graffiti, you can use that product and it will take it off. You know, Hotsy works really well as well. And again, you may not get 100% of it off, but you can get it faded down enough where through one winter season and the salt and the wear and tear, you know, it may be gone instead of, you know, that 4 or 5 year, you know, you continue to look at it. But the purpose is they should be using water-soluble paints as directed. And so I think that's one of the things we want to, you know, if we move forward with an ordinance, that's the rule. And if you choose not to use the water-soluble paint, then however means and methods you use to remove it, even insofar as replacement, and maybe in some cases, you know, then, you know, that, again, you had the choice.
Thank you.
Counselor Larson.
And thank you, Mayor. I guess my first question is, when somebody calls 811, I'm talking about probably a private party, and they want to put a swimming pool in the backyard, or they want to do something. And our state law requires that if they're going to dig, you have to call 811. For something like that, first off, who would come out and respond to that? The guy's going to dig in a part of his backyard and he wants to know if he's going to hit anything. Who would respond to when somebody calls 811?
When you call 811, there's a standard requirement for everybody to respond to that ticket, regardless of if they have anything in the area. So, for instance, if you were digging a tree out in your backyard, and, you know, obviously the gas company would come out there, Excel would come out and mark gas line in your yard. There may or may not be a main water line down there. You know, usually what happens is you put extents on the area that you're marking. So if it's private property, typically they won't go into the right of way. They'll limit it to the right of way. And so it varies. But when you call 811, everybody that has a utility shall respond in some sort of fashion. They may clear the ticket and say, we have no utilities in that area, and it's clear. And then, you know, the contractor or homeowner, if they were self-performing, would get that ticket and it would have all those utility locates on there with a map, and a lot of the maps now are even digital and GIS.
So then, if Excel, for example, comes out and marks a utility and the utility line goes over a sidewalk and onto the street, would the homeowner, under this discussion, would the homeowner be responsible for removing that then? Or would it be on the utility? You know, 'cause, and just trying to think of the possibilities of things, the sort of common things that could happen.
Sure. I think this would be to whoever is pulling the right-of-way permit. So if the homeowner is working on their private property and they don't need a permit, then they wouldn't, they wouldn't be responsible for that in this scenario. We would hold Excel responsible through our franchise agreement to, remove that locate in that instance. Otherwise, in most cases, it would be the contractor who pulls the right-of-way permit and is working in the right-of-way.
Yeah, that helps tremendously. And I guess the other question would be then how does this get sort of noticed and then enforced? If a builder comes in and uses and marks up the street, and then after the job is finished and some time has passed and the lines are still there, would it be anybody walking by can file a complaint form on the city website, or how does that get notified?
Yeah, I don't know that we've worked out the means and the methods of how we would be doing the notification, but again, when you would pull a right-of-way permit, this warning or whatever reference would be on there that, utility locates are subject to section, ordinance, municipal code, whatever that may be. And then that would be on the right-of-way permit that is presented to the contractor or person doing the work.
So the builder would then, they would know, they've got a permit. On the permit, it says you have to remove any of these markings as part of the city giving you a permit.
We would want to put it on the permit. I don't know that we would reference what was written in the section. We would probably reference the ordinance or code section.
Okay, yeah, thanks.
Counselor Dozeman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I feel like this is a lot more prevalent lately than historically. Is that because there's been a shift away from water-soluble paints and towards more permanent ones?
I think it's just because of all the investment in the community lately. There's been tons, and any new construction project usually requires utility locates, right? And they go into our streets, across sidewalks. I can't have anything to add to that.
Yeah, no, it's just the business and the amount of, fiber and stuff that's going into the ground now. And then, on a large project, say like a WADS project, you'll go out and you'll mark the utility, and then 30 days later, you'll need to refresh that. So they'll call for a refresh, and they'll come out again and they'll paint over those same lines. You would hope that they would paint over the same lines. Sometimes they do not. And you're like, why didn't you just paint over the same lines? So again, it's just, the amount of construction that's going on.
Is it industry standard to use a water-soluble paint?
It's encouraged, yes. And so,
So if
I don't know that it's a standard, but I know that we use water-soluble paint, and a lot of the other 811 regulators do use water-soluble paint, but that's more costly, so some may choose not to.
that answers my question. Thank you.
Counselor Hulteen.
Thank you. This is, I'm with others. This is just a huge pet peeve of mine. And back in the day, I actually did a lot of research on this because we may or may not have done a mural in our neighborhood. But we did it on the driveways, but we were like just researching how long it would, what the different paint durations were. First of all, I support this, obviously. The thing that I'm thinking about when you were mentioning that there's stuff that can be used to actually remove when non-water soluble paint's used, the more teeth we can put on requiring the water soluble to avoid having to use more chemicals that could be getting in our waterways and I mean, it's a lot of chemicals already, but really reinforcing the water soluble instead of encouraging people to use something else and going out and then using more chemicals to remove it. I'm sure that's not as cost effective as just using the water soluble, but I'd really like to make sure we've got as much teeth on pushing that water soluble in that 45 to 60 days that it takes for it to disappear, rather than encouraging the use of other chemicals to erase it.
And I had just a couple of questions, and I wanted to start with Counselor Hulteen and ask her if the chickens were still there by
No,
Louise Turner Park.
They got painted over, and that was the furthest other end of the spectrum from water soluble paint that you could ever imagine. So it was so
Anyway.
toxic that we weren't allowed to touch it. So.
But it was effective. But let me ask you this: would it be? Is it it's sort of a public, education process, if you will? Would it help us to go to the Utility Notification Center of Colorado, if that's what it's still called, the 811, and kind of see if we can lobby them to get the word out to their users that we, if in fact we go to an ordinance that would prohibit that or strengthen our ability not to have that in town. And then, what sort of sanctions do you think we might be able to employ for bad actors in this realm?
Sanctions, I don't, that's not my realm, I don't think.
What-
But 811 does have a conference, an annual conference, and I think they just held it a couple months ago, and it is encouraged at the conference, because our folks attend that conference, to use the water soluble paints.
Okay.
I think one sanction could be, which is mentioned in the memo that another city uses, is cost recovery.
Right.
So if the city has to go out and remove the paint, then we charge back to the contractor.
Yeah. I mean, and maybe at the next conference of the 811 folks to say, now it's illegal in Wheat Ridge to use this. And it's not suggested, it's mandated. And I don't know. It's one of my pet peeves, I did a restaurant, 12 or 15 years ago, and finally you can't see the marks, but we had some paving coming this week, so it's marked again, so it's a continual process. Councilor Snell.
Just one thing to add, I think, Mayor, you're probably thinking this as well, but I've noticed just on walks around the neighborhood, occasionally there's some overspray could get onto landscaping and things like that. And the last thing we want is for people to do all that hard work in their yard. And then, someone have lime green paint and they don't like lime green paint. So I'm in full support of that as well. So thank you.
And then do other private utility providers don't necessarily need a call from 811 to go out and mark or service their utilities, correct?
If you're doing any work in the right-of-way underground, you have to call 811, that is the law.
But not all markings are for people doing work in the right-of-way. They go out there and say, well, where's the water meter?
Oh, yeah, if they're searching it, like if the water district is out there and they're doing flushings or something, just maintenance, utility locates are not required. So yeah, they're allowed to get into their utilities.
Yeah.
Or we can go out on our signals and work on our signals and our cabinets without having locates of that nature. Same thing with Excel and their boxes. But if you're actually putting shovel in ground, that is
Then you have to.
then that is the law.
But you don't need to do that to be able to go out and spray paint the sidewalks.
No, it's separate. So, again, the contractor who's doing the work needs to do the work. He needs to take his shovel or his backhoe out there to perform the work. So in order to do that, he has to call 811.
Right.
So even on an emergency break, you'll see a crew maybe sitting around while the water may be still leaking out of the line. Well, they're waiting for the emergency locates because you can't, again, touch the line. I mean, you can try to turn the valves or whatever, but you can't, again, break the seal or surface without having those locates in place. Otherwise, they are at risk if they hit any of those utilities.
And would it be helpful to go to the other, the utility providers and let them know that we've, changed our operating procedure?
You're exactly right. We would put the word out
Okay.
and make it known
Consolidated
that,
and
yep,
Denver Water
all
and
of
Denver
them.
Wastewater and,
All of them.
all of them. Okay. Any other questions on this item? Councilor Martinez?
This is a total non sequitur, but sometimes we need them. Like maybe we could include training our dog watch neighborhood program to know the difference between water soluble so they can be keeping their eye out on the streets for us. So I appreciate the thorough approach to the communication on this.
Councilor Weaver?
I'm going to ask for consensus on this so we can stop it.
Okay.
Is that okay? Or would you like to do that, Mayor?
No. Do we have consensus to move this item forward to talk about legislation that would address this? It certainly looks like it, so.
Great, thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Ken, for a great presentation and
Ken.
taking questions. And, that takes care of the agenda items that we were working on tonight, and I think we do the staff reports.
A couple updates or reminders. Trunk or Treat is coming up October 25th from 4 to 6 at the Green. And I just saw this morning that the Gold's Market is having trick or treat the same evening or same day but from 2 to 4. So you could go from 2 to 4 at Gold's and go to the Green from 4 to 6.
Do we have a way station on the way?
Lots
to
of
weigh the
candy,
bags,
yes. I sent an email out, I think earlier this weekend or earlier today. We do have a table for the RSA Get It Done breakfast. A few of you have responded yes or no. October 30th at 7:30 a.m. We still have a few seats, so if you're interested, please let me know. Thanks.
Elected officials reports. Any reports to report out? Councilor Ohm?
Thank you, Mayor. I think it was last Wednesday, we went to the groundbreaking for Prost and the Lookout. Pretty amazing placemaking that we're having Wheat Ridge in that Clear Creek area. I'm really super excited about that. And then an amazing award for our mayor last Thursday, the Sam Mehmet. And I'll let the mayor talk about that a little bit more, but there was a lot of support. Really great for everybody turning up for that. And then on Friday, the Wadsworth ribbon cutting. There was a lot of good support from all the officials coming out to that. And then I was in my backyard, basically at Anderson was the Jeffco backyard barbecue on Saturday. That was a great thing to raise some money for, the 4-H and the Grange. And Dominic invited me to check it out, and I was happy I did. I was kind of hungry at that time, and was able to give them some money to help raise some funds. And there's a lot of stuff going on last week. Thank you.
Thank you. Additional reports? Councilor Weaver?
I just wanted to thank the homeless navigation team for presenting again tonight. I didn't say this earlier, but I had a friend as well, I think with all the stories that everyone shared, who was biking through Wheat Ridge and with her biking group and said, "What are you all doing in Wheat Ridge?" There were not people on, in the media, and there were not, and I said, well, we had a half an hour conversation. And so I just want to thank everybody because to go back to Councilor Hulteen's comments, we've all worked pretty hard on making sure that this whole program works well. And this is 5 years in, pretty cool. So Wheat Ridge is a great place to be. Thanks.
Great. Councilor Larson?
Thank you, Mayor. And I did attend the award ceremony on Thursday, and I got to actually meet Sam Mehmet. He's quite a character. The ribbon cutting was a lot of fun on Friday, and I think probably the most asked question is, when is it actually going to open? And I understand we're looking at about a month from now.
It's open now. You can drive down it. You can walk down it.
But it's not continuous flow yet.
Continuous flow probably at about a month.
In about a month from now.
Yeah, sometime in November.
All right, we're going to hold you to that.
Okay.
And then finally on Sunday, my wife and I attended the Jefferson Library Foundation's their twice a year book sale. loaded up on some books, and so I've got reading to get me through the wintertime. Thanks.
Sounds like a whale of a sail. All right. Last week was a big week. We had a nice ribbon cutting on Wadsworth on Friday, and we had a little celebration for me. I want to thank the city for extending that courtesy to all of those folks that were able to come, and it was a real honor for me. So I want to thank you very much for that. And going out to Prost Brewing and the Lookout, if you haven't been out to Clear Creek Crossing, there's just a lot of stuff going on out there, and I think it's a very great addition to the city, and we should all be proud of that. We've come a long way. So we will be back here next week for a meeting at 6:30. Hope you all can join us, and all the folks at home. So is there any more business that we need to discuss tonight? Seeing none, let's stand adjourned and go home safely. Thank you.